Welcome to the Exponential Edge podcast with your host, Arya Sulur. I'm excited to have you join me on this journey exploring the forefront of technological advancements and innovation that will shape our future. As a rising junior at Acton Boxborough Regional High School and the CEO of SecArmor, a cybersecurity startup, I've always been fascinated by the transformative power of technology. In this podcast, we will dive deep into 5 key areas that are poised for exponential growth in the next decade. We'll be exploring the realms of cybersecurity, generative AI, sustainability and climate tech, biotech and human longevity, as well as the reshoring of manufacturing. These topics hold immense potential to revolutionize our world and redefine the way we live, work, and interact. Each episode will feature insightful conversations with experts, thought leaders, and visionaries who are at the forefront of these fields. In just 30 minutes, our goal is to provide you with 5 signature nuggets of wisdom from our guests. These key takeaways will empower you with knowledge and help you stay ahead in an ever-evolving technological landscape. Without further ado, let's introduce our guest for this week. Hello, everyone. Today, our guest is Remko Vos, CEO of Cujo AI. Hi, Remko.
Hey, Arya. Thanks for having me on the show.
Of course. So, to get started, could you just briefly go over your career thus far?
Sure. So I grew up in the Netherlands, did an aeronautical engineering degree there, ended up being a software developer, but always wanted to sort of be more on the business side, and so that made me sort of at some point decide to do an MBA. I ended up at MIT Sloan in Boston or Cambridge, I should say, and from there I ended up in various roles in the US. So I stayed in the US after that, initially as product manager. In sort of both large and small companies, eventually ending up at Comcast, where I was leading a emerging technology team that was really looking at like how can we use technology to augment existing Comcast services, and sort of there I came. I got in touch with Cujo AI, and when they started looking for a new CEO, that sort of became my new job. So that's how I ended up at Cujo.
Mm-hmm. Yep, great. And like you said, you went to MIT Sloan, obviously one of probably the best business school in this country.
I think so.
And one of the best in the world, right? And hub of innovation, great people there. And how did that environment shape your entrepreneurial journey so far and into leading a cutting edge company like Cujo AI?
Yeah, so like I said, I always liked technology, but I like technology very much in the context of the business problem that it's trying to solve, and so when I was looking for an MBA, I was really purposefully looking at a school that would combine both technology and obviously business, and I think that is where MIT sort of really was my first choice, because it's sort of. It's not just the curriculum; it's the people that you meet there, the people that you work with, both in school as well as outside of school. Sort of all live and breathe technology, and so from that perspective, a lot of exposure there, a lot of like sort of exposure also to small startups, which when I went there, sort of graduating in 2001, was like sort of a big thing, obviously with. Sort of the internet exploding at that point in time, and so a lot of people were looking at small companies, and it was a great environment to be, a great environment to learn and learn all, sort of not just looking at the great examples, but also hear from people who did a startup that didn't work, and it's from that perspective, I think learned a lot there on what to expect when you are. Working with smaller companies, and I've done a few since then during my career as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like you said, technology and business was the intersection that you wanted to work in, and I feel like what's the use of technology that doesn't really help anyone, right? That doesn't solve a problem that we have in the world, right?
So this is there's so much around us, and I think that in a way there's a lot of helpful technology. Let me not like trivialize that. There's a lot of difficult problems that are solved with technology, and by and large, it's fantastic. All the focus that we have on technology, but sometimes, I feel that people lose track of what is actually the problem that we're trying to solve. Like there's just this one example that I recently have with Teams, like the tool that we use for video conferencing within Cujo, and sort of every now and then it seems to think that my iPhone is the preferred method of doing the video while the audio is coming from my laptop, and I don't know why. And there must have been somebody who thought about that and thought that this was going to be a neat feature. But I think that question of why, that is probably the most important question that you should ask when you start to work on technology. Is like, why would I do this? Why would somebody be interested in this feature? How would it help them? And I think that that question isn't always asked, and that then leads to technology for the sake of technology that isn't really solving a real problem. And
Yep. And that's actually awesome because I see that when I look at Cujo AI's products. I see that that value in them. They're all made for
and
for
it's
specific
something
use.
that yeah, sorry, it is something that we really try to think about this, especially as a small company. It is, and that goes back to sort of what you learn when you go to a business school, is that you have to make choices, and you need to make the choices in such a way that you can build a successful company. And that means that saying no is at least as important as saying yes. And whether to say no, whether to say yes, that you need to ask yourself the right questions to get to that answer. And again, this is what I like about technology, the intersection of technology and business, why I like to become a product manager, because this is the essential sort of skill and goal as a product manager, is to answer those type of questions. It's like, why would we do this? Why would we not do something else? And that's a great question to think about.
Yep, definitely. So also I was looking up Cujo obviously in preparation for this, and I wanted to get to know where did the name come from? Because I was looking it up, I couldn't really find it anywhere. And it's an interesting name, it's an awesome name. I mean,
It's
I looked it up and I saw a Stephen King novel with Cujo being a dog in that novel. But I guess
Yes.
that's not really.
So obviously I joined Cujo long after the name was selected, and Cujo is the book that Stephen King wrote and was later turned into a movie. Is about a dog that guards a home. When Cujo was founded, it was with the intent to protect the home network, all the devices connected to your home. So from that perspective, protecting the home, it used to be a dog. Now it's Cujo, the cybersecurity solution. That made a lot of sense. The part that, quite frankly, I never really got and never got a real answer to is that it's actually a horror movie.
Mhm.
And the dog
Yeah.
does a couple of things that you wouldn't want a dog to do. So I never really understood like how we ended up with that name, but that's the history, and it's we keep it like that. It's a little bit of a mystery.
Hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting because I didn't even know if that had anything to do with it. And hearing it from you, I
Yeah,
mean,
no,
that part
it's
makes sense. At least the dog and
yeah,
security. Hmm.
yeah,
Interesting.
it's funny.
Hmm.
We keep it.
So going into cybersecurity and AI, um, they've been going hand in hand recently a lot. And how has AI transformed the landscape of cybersecurity, and particularly in anomaly detection?
Yeah, I think what AI allows us to do, and quite frankly, it's not just AI. It's a number of different data science techniques that we're using. But like what AI allows us to do is really operate at a scale that would not have been possible without sort of technologies like AI. Like, on a daily basis, there are millions of new pages, new websites that are coming up that people are serving to. For us to identify which of those websites are potentially malicious and which are not, which threats that operators that are trying to connect to devices in the home are malicious and which ones are not. Those are questions that, at the scale at which we operate, we're like in tens of millions of homes in North America and Europe. You can only solve if you have technologies like AI to help you do that. There is no way that you can do that with just humans. So for us, AI is very much a way to scale the knowledge that we have and help us identify in that huge sort of internet, like sort of what we believe is malicious and what is not. It is a little bit of a double-edged sword though, because it also has obviously the technology is also available to hackers and cyber criminals, and they can use it to build quite sophisticated campaigns. So it allows us to scale, but it also has increased the complexity of the threats that we need to deal with, and so it's from that perspective a little bit of an arms race in terms of what you do with it. But yeah, the fundamental answer is like we wouldn't be able to deliver the security solution that we do today without AI, because we wouldn't be able to scale to meet all the threats that we're seeing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And could you go in depth to the software that you guys use to protect homes and other products that you may make?
Yeah, so fundamentally, like our value proposition is that we protect every device that is connected to your home network, whether it's via cable, like an Ethernet cable, or via Wi-Fi. It really doesn't matter for us. Everything that is connected, we aim to protect that. And the way we do that is we have an agent running on the gateway or router that sits inside your home, and that gateway, or our firmware on that gateway, is picking up on the data that traverses the gateway, and we analyze that data to see if there's any malicious activity that we can identify. We have a large cloud application where we do a lot of the actual processing of that data. So there's an interaction between the gateway inside the home and the cloud inside an AWS environment where we that interact with each other to analyze that traffic. And we need to do all of that real time, obviously, because it's when you want to go to a website, you want to go to a website now. So we have milliseconds to do our analysis and say like, yeah, you're good to go, or like, no, that is not safe. Or when you're outside, you try to connect to a device inside your home. We need to be very quick in our analysis. Like, is that a trusted source where this request is coming from, or is it not? And so all of that needs to be done in milliseconds. So that expect or requires a lot, especially at the scale that we're doing it. Like I said, tens of millions of homes. We're dealing with billions of requests on a daily basis that we need to process. And so there's a lot of optimization that we do on the gateway itself inside the cloud to handle all of those requests in as efficient way as we possibly can. And then when it comes to anomaly detection, I think that's where you're going. Is like this is where we use a lot of AI. We analyze each request. When you go to CNN.com, we know that now that's a safe site, so we don't have to worry about that. And so we know which sites are safe. When there's a new website that you're going through, we need to do an analysis of like, well, is that something is there anything suspicious in the way that the URL is configured, in the information is asking the user for? So very quickly we do that analysis, and then we say like, okay, no, this looks fine, and you should do it. And this is not, and this looks suspicious. But that whole analysis, that is not a binary question. We never know for sure whether something is malicious or not. We just think that a lot of people go here, it seems okay, And well, this is something new, and it has something that is different from other similar websites that we've known. So we think this one is suspicious, and so this is where sort of AI plays a big role, and the quality of the AI is very important, because obviously if you do that wrong, then you block people from accessing a whole lot of different websites. If you do it right, then you filter out exactly those that are malicious, and you allow people to access all the other ones that are good. And so that is sort of the art in the science that we apply to get that balance just right.
Mm-hmm. And once you get this information, do you relay it back to the internet service provider? What do you do with it?
Yes. So our primary customer is the internet service provider. So we're integrated in their software on their gateway. We're integrated in their back office in their cloud environment. And so yes, the data that we collect, what we feed back to the service provider is like, hey, on Remco's iPhone, we have found like a threat and we've blocked it. So that's the type of information we send back. We obviously, we as a company, Cujo, we aggregate all of our information. We analyze all of the information that we have across our customers, and that is one of the ways in which we scale, because we just have access to a lot of data. All of that data is ours. But when we block something, we share that with the service provider so that they can relay that to their customers. So they can tell, Cujo does not interact with Remko directly. Remko interacts with his service provider, and Cujo tells the service provider, we blocked the threat on Remko's iPhone, and the service provider then can share that with me.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I wanted to ask, so obviously people get new devices very frequently nowadays. Just anything like new home security systems or a new iPhone or something like that. So how does Cujo stay up to date with all the new devices that are connected to a home system?
Yeah, this is so we call that device intelligence, and it's actually a fundamental part of our solution is to identify all of the devices that are connected to your home network. And in our case, it's a complex topic and a differentiator. It's an area that we're really good at, and it's fundamental. Like for us to understand the devices in the home is fundamental to secure those devices. If you don't understand what a device is, it becomes really hard to secure that device. And so, device intelligence is really really important element of our solution, and you're absolutely right. There are thousands and thousands of different devices that we've encountered. In total, we've worked since 2017. We've identified over 2 billion different devices, and
Wow.
and yeah, the number of device models is staggering. This
Yeah.
is another area where AI comes into play. So we analyze the device as it connects to the gateway, and analyze the packets that are exchanged between the gateway and that device, and we use that to identify a device. Now we have thousands and thousands of rules that help us specify the vendor of that device, the model of that device, the operating system of that device, the type of device, is it a thermostat, is it a camera, so these rules help us identify that, and we use actually AI to use those to identify which are the appropriate rules to recognize a device. And so it's a complex interaction. And that's what I meant earlier. It's like AI is really important, but it's not the only data science technique that you have. And so we use a combination of techniques in this case to identify those devices. It is difficult, which is sort of good for us because we're good at it. It's also hard because it's difficult. And so that means that sometimes you get it wrong, and so there's also a human factor there. Like if we cannot figure out, if we use AI and our other technologies to really try to identify the device automatically at first, if for whatever reason that doesn't work or we're not sure about it, that's when a human comes into play. So this is a great example of how AI helps us scale. Like we would never be able to keep up with the devices if we would need to have an analyst look at each new device that comes in and try to figure it out, or worse, we would have to buy each device that is released and sort of recognize it that way. But there are devices and there are situations where we cannot figure it out, and that's when we have to dig deeper. And we've encountered something new, something that we haven't seen before, and that is sometimes where we do use those human analysts. So it's a real nice interaction between technology and humans.
And do you think that your AI could get to the point where there is no human intervention, or like very minute human intervention?
Uh, we would like to get there, but I think the nature of technology is that it continues to evolve, and it evolves on the device side in terms of what those devices do, and I think that in itself causes a challenge to do it sort of completely automated. And then there's also a trick, or like there's sort of the question of like, how much data does the device share. What we've seen over the course of the last years is that devices share less data than they did in the past. They're less chatty, and it makes it a little bit harder for us to identify the device that we're working with. And so it is the space continues to evolve, and so ideally, from my perspective, yes, we would be able to do it fully automated, and we achieve high degrees of automation. Will we ever get rid of the situations where there is something new? I don't think so, just by nature of the fact that we're dealing with technology and the technology itself is evolving.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I wanted to go back to the amount of information that goes through Cujo and the internet service provider gateways. So packet inspection is a term that viewers may or may not be familiar with. But could you elucidate its importance in cybersecurity and how Cujo integrates it into its defense mechanics, especially like deep packet inspection and how you don't violate privacy of your customers?
Yeah, if you think about like a packet, like everything that you do on the internet, whether it's the video stream of our conference call or the audio part of it, or when you browse to a website and you download some text, all of that is essentially packaged in a packet. And there is the payload to the packet, which is typically encrypted, and then there are the headers of the packet. So when you're on the enterprise, in the enterprise world, you can tell your employees, we monitor everything that you're doing, and you can just look at every aspect of all those packets to make sure that there's nothing malicious going on. We work with service providers. Nobody wants their service provider to read the emails that they're sending and to watch the videos, to know which videos they're watching. And so we cannot decrypt any of the packets that exist. So when you talk about deep packets inspection, that is when you start to look at that encrypted part of the message. We don't do that. We only look at the headers of the message, and we need to use that to identify, well, where is Aria going with this URL request? Like which website does he want to visit, and is that something that we trust or not? So we focus on the header part of the packets, and we use that to identify the devices. We use that to identify the nature of the interaction. We use that to identify whether we believe it's malicious or good to go. And so there's only a little bit of information available to us, and that's part of the challenge that we're dealing with. It's also the difference, quite frankly, between an enterprise solution and a solution focused on the home network. We simply don't have access. Well, first of all, we don't have the compute environment that an enterprise solution has, where it can just run on large servers. We run on a small gateway with a little bit of CPU, a little bit of memory, and on top of that, we only have a limited amount of data to do our analysis. So it makes our solution. It's a challenge of the solution that we bring to the market. It's like, how do you use the little bit of information that you have on that small compute environment and still within milliseconds arrive at a decision whether or not that URL request is malicious or not.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really amazing how you guys have, like you said, such little information. You don't even have to open the packet up to be able to provide your service.
No, I think that would be the end of our solution if we start doing that, because I don't think that the customers of the service providers would like that. I certainly wouldn't like that, and so yeah, we cannot go there.
Mhm. And so once the anomaly is detected, uh, I believe you guys go into device quarantining. Could you go in depth to that?
Yeah, so this is actually so we don't quarantine device. We look at each of the connections that are coming from the device, and some of those connections may be entirely legit. And I just you may be watching. Just use a laptop as an example. You may be watching a video on YouTube. That's perfect. We have no problem with that. And sort of in another screen, you're browsing to a website where we think like, hey, that's malicious. We don't want to quarantine the device. You should be absolutely be able to watch that video. We just want to block that one connection to that one website. So we focus on the connection and we assess each connection individually to make sure that it's legit. And it's when we think that there's something wrong, then we block that connection. And we do that for the handheld devices like the laptop and the mobile phones, but also, for example, for the cameras inside your home or your thermostat. Like they're those devices have a very predictable behavior, and so we allow everything that we know to be common for that device to happen. But if all of a sudden something different happens and your thermostat reaches out to China, just making it up. But that's like, hey, that's suspicious. It's never done that before. Why is it doing that? We would block just that connection to China, but you can still manage the temperature inside your home. And so because we think at the connection level, not at the device level, we don't have to quarantine the device. We can just essentially allow or disallow a certain connection to happen.
So it doesn't block the user's experience at all. It just blocks
That is the
outside.
key thing. Yes, that's absolutely key. And again, this is something where we deal with families inside homes who typically do not have much of an experience with cybersecurity and don't know sort of how to deal with it. So very important that they can continue to use the devices as they're used to, and we just block whatever we're uncomfortable with, and that way we allow there as much as possible the user experience to be as good as it can be.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's great to know. And I wanted to end things off. I wanted to go back to your career before you came to Cujo AI. So I saw you were part of many different fields like smart grid and smart city initiatives, communications, and digital security at Comcast. So how did all these different professions and fields that you've had experience in amalgamate into what you've done at Cujo?
Yeah, so I think every time that I did something new, I was looking for a new challenge, not just in the role, but also something that would teach me something new. And I think what I've learned from that goes back to actually where we started that conversation about, like, when you asked, like, give me an example of bad technology in a way. And I think that by being part of a number of different companies that all deal with different technologies, I think it trains you to really think about, like, why are we actually doing this? And that question why, I said it at the beginning, is I think fundamental to everything that we do, and it's something that I think drives everything that we do at Cujo as well. Like, it's Cujo started as a cybersecurity company, and it's still a very important part, the biggest part of our company. But what we realized is that really what we're good at is the analysis of the data that goes through the gateway. And so that data can be used for security for sure, but there's a lot of other use cases where that same data can be used. Like, we talked a little bit about device intelligence. Well, there's a lot of operational use cases within a service provider, but that same data can be used to optimize processes. How do you manage and optimize the Wi-Fi settings inside your home? If you know what devices are connected to that network, you can do a better job than if every device is the same. And so, taking a step back, I think what I've learned is taking a step back and and looking at each of those every time I joined a new company, and really sort of ask myself that questions like, why are we doing this, and what are the alternatives of doing this? And I think that has become part of how I think, and that's become part of how I now try at Cujo to look at like what are the different ways in which we can use the technology that we already have. How can we use it for different use cases? Good for us, good for our customers, and so that makes for good business.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So finally, could you just provide us with your 5 key takeaways from our conversation?
I think first and foremost, it's one thing that by nature of being at Cujo, I think everyone at home now has a lot of connected devices, and that those devices, the number of those devices will continue to grow. Like your next fridge, if it's not connected already, will be connected. The laundry machine, the clothes that you'll be wearing. And I think one thing to think about is that each of those devices, because it's connected, it's a potential cybersecurity risk. And yes, companies like Cujo can do a lot to secure that device, but I think there's a lot there is a big responsibility there for individuals like you and me also, that to make sure that we set up, we don't use default user IDs and passwords. We set up strongly encrypted passwords. We change them every now and then, and really so think about not just the utility of the device, but also the security of the device. When you get into the car, you put on your seatbelt. When you buy a new device, you make sure it's secure. That's sort of my number one thing, because like no matter what we can do, like at the end of the day, it's the user who's ultimately responsible for securing their own data. Second, I think we talked a lot about this. Like AI and data are sort of key to our solution. And I think if I compare like where I started in my career, we were building software applications that were meant to keep the data and make data available to processes. Right now, so the data itself has so much value, and there's a lot of value in collecting that data and using technologies like AI to see what value that data can deliver. So the software is just a tool to collect the data, the values in the data itself. And I think that like certainly sort of people at the beginning of their careers like you, I think it's a very interesting area to look at. I think the world has fundamentally changed. The world will continue to change. So don't get stuck on this. But I think it's very good to be aware, sort of where the value is being generated nowadays, and that's in the data. And then I think there's one third one I think that I have. I don't know if I can get 5, but like sort of what I mentioned before is like I've always looked for challenges, and I think in the steps that I take in my career, and I didn't necessarily expect that would ultimately get me to the role of CEO at Cujo, but it just happened, and it happened because I was looking for challenges and because I continued to learn. And I think that is something, a little bit of career advice perhaps, but like, I would certainly suggest that you continue to challenge yourself, you continue to learn. And I think you use that to look for new opportunities, because the new opportunities are not coming from doing the same thing over and over again. They're coming from taking the next step, challenging yourself, stumbling sometimes, but taking the next step and learning. So I think if I look back, I'm not nearly done with my career yet, but if I look back at my career to date, then I think that has always helped.
Yep. Thank you for those. And thanks for joining us again today.
Yeah, thank you. It's great being here.
Mm-hmm. And thanks for everyone for watching today's episode of the Exponential Edge podcast. And join us next time to listen and learn about trends that will see exponential adoption in the future. Thanks, Remko.
Thank you, Aaron.